you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
No problem.
Alrighty, good morning to everyone. You are now tuned in to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Welcome to the program. If you'd like to get in contact with the show or have a question or a VGQ, dial this number, 516-453-9921, and press the number 1 button, and you will get in line so that Mr. Fuller may be able to address or answer your question. I would ask, please, ma'am, please, sir, that your question or your VGQ be short, so that Mr. Fuller can keep attention on whatever it is that you want. And I'm quite sure that during the show he will describe in detail about the 4 wants. But make sure you do that so that he may address your question properly. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Let me repeat that again. The numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And if I have time today, which I probably will not, but if I do, I may try to get that in because there are other Gmails that are waiting to be addressed, so we'll try to do that. And you can also get in the chat room, and there's usually some lively conversation going on in the chat room. Right now, Asan Kofa 777 is in there, and Jacoby 2 Kane 2 is also in the house. So good morning to both of you. Okay, with that, let me say this: when you do call in, please give your name to the screen caller, as Greg from Florida just did. Thank you, Greg. I was getting ready to say that, and I saw that blue question mark come up. But those of you who do elect to call in, please give your name to the screen caller, and we can proceed on with this show. Okay, let's start off in saying this. Good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay, Mr. Fuller is still learning. Okay, let's start off with a question from the Gmail. Let's see. This is from Brother Yusuf. He says this, Mr. Fuller. He says, Mr. Fuller has said on numerous occasions that white supremacists can be forgiven for a whole lot of mistakes, crimes, and mistreatment they have committed on non-white people of the world, except for what they have done to the non-white people sexually, sexual sabotage, scatterization, as he calls it, end of quote. My question for Mr. Fuller, as I am trying to get an understanding and clarity, is why does he believe that white supremacists can be forgiven for all the murders and rapes, thefts, and destructions of non-white people, but he only draws the line at the sexual confusion? What is it about sexual confusion / sexual sabotage that outweighs all other crimes and mistreatment of white supremacists on non-white people? Thank you for taking my question.
Yes. All of the areas really are intertwined. But that is one of the major features of the system of white supremacy in holding on to their power into infinity. Because sex is the strongest motivating force next to the system of white supremacy itself. So I just list that under the 8th area of activity, which is sex. And but the other areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, and war. And all of war, by the way, including the sex, because the white supremacists make war in every area of activity, economics, education. It's all about war. I mean, they are just about war. They're warriors all the way. Now, they also build, but they build for destruction. Everything that they build up, they intend for one way or another to be involved in some type of destruction, usually of the non-white people of the planet. So I say you can forgive them in the other areas of activity just to make a point about how important sexuality is, which is just being kind of just brushed aside. I mean, if you don't produce people and do it in a constructive way, I mean, killing people later on, I mean, that's just an add-on. I mean, if people are not here, you don't have to kill them. And that's a part of their racist population control strategy. Populations are controlled. And like in the 1990s, either directly or indirectly, the usual suspects, the white supremacists, had a lot to do with 900,000 people, 800 or 900, so I've seen different reports, in Rwanda, 1994, being killed in just a few days. I think it was just, less than a month. I hear different kind of reports on it, but I recall it was less than a month. From 800 to 900,000 people. And you never see photographs about it. You don't hear very many reports about it now, probably in other parts of the world, or in, people have written books about it, but I don't think very much. But then when one person is killed, the white supremacists even join in, like in the case of Mr. George Floyd. So what's going on there? You have huge numbers, you're correct, when you say all the murders and whatnot. But the white supremacists, they know how many people are on the planet, and they know how many people they're going to kill off. They're going to tailor the population. That's how it's described in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. They're not trying to kill all non-white people, in my opinion. Some people say, oh, yes, they intend to kill all black people. They're going to do that. They're planning genocide. Well, I never believed that. Well, I'm going to say I never believed that. At one time, I did believe that was on their schedule. Now, they still might do it, regardless of what I believe. But I say that, hey, having black people here to kick around is a lot of fun. That's one of their main features for fun. Even when they get ready to go in outer space, they're talking about attacking the purple people, avatars, and all of this type of thing, I guess. I certainly looked at old movies and whatnot, Flash Gordon movies, Buck Rogers movies, and I remember one episode back in the 1930s where they said they're going to Mars, I believe the planet was, and they're seeking to fight the clay people made out of clay. Well, that's pretty close to black people. I mean, black black people, they call them the mud people, whatnot. Well, clay is close enough. I mean, it has color in it. So let's go kill them. I mean, well, they're kind of out of reach. I mean, that's quite a stretch. I mean, you have to spend a lot of money, a lot of time and whatnot trying to get to them. Yeah, but if there's some out there, if there's any people of color out there somewhere, let's go find them. Let's go to every type of expense you can name. Star Wars. See, I mean, even the movies that they show, it's all about war when they talk about outer space. Star Trek, Star War, and all the philosophies that go with it. And the efforts we're going to make, ray guns. Back in the 1930s, the old movie said, we're going to have ray guns by then. You shoot somebody with a ray, not with a bullet. But you just put like a flashlight, shine it on the person, and the person dropped dead. See, by then, we'll have something like that. And, hey, it'd be pretty nice out there in outer space. And we'll just go and from rocket ship to rocket ship. And the white supremacists, the way they think, they can just see rocket ships zooming through the air, fighting each other, blowing each other up. And preferably with people of color. That's the main thing. Hey, you got to have some color now. I mean, otherwise it's not going to be fun. Kill each other, but my goodness, killing a whole bunch of dark-skinned people, yeah. So in answer to the question, the sexual thing is important because sexuality is about the production of people, not imitation sexuality. Imitation sexuality is not sex at all. I mean, let's go around sticking this and that and sticking this and that and the other and any old thing. Between people, that's not the most constructive activity. Even though the white supremacists say, particularly for dark-skinned people, that is one of the most constructive activities that they can do. Is to go around just looking, they got some sex organs. I mean, hey, don't limit it to something like male and female. Are you crazy? Are you backward? Are you primitive? I mean, put that sex organ in something else. I mean, male with female. That's so primitive. That's so backward. That's what they're saying here in 2021. That's not liberal. That's not rainbow. Particularly for you black people, I mean, you need to wake up and get with the programs. And they are going all out to doing it. And they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't extremely important to them.
Okay. All righty. There you go. With that for Brother Studi. And let's do this one here. This is from Drake Barrington. He says this, Mr. Fuller. I recently watched Dalen Rusk Police Integration. Anyway, not integration, but interrogation interview. Again, and in his interview, he said this, quote, from the very day a black person is born, they look at everything through a racial lens, whereas white people don't. This is why black people are so easily offended. A white person can say something to a black person not even thinking about race, but a black person will say that is racist because it is a white person who said it, end of quote. Mr. Fuller, according to counter-racist logic and your observations, do you think that black people see everything through a racial lens? Because if that were the case, then why are we in such bad shape? Do you think Mr. Ruff's statement is true or false? Thank you. Best regards.
Well, that's some black people. Most black people don't think about race until they get chased by somebody with a gun or something, and sirens blaring and whatnot. But the average black person is not thinking about race walking around. That's one reason the race problem hasn't been solved. You got a lot of black people on the planet. A black person right now doing some farming or doing some fishing in a river in Congo, in Uganda. There's a lot of black people on the planet. The average black person, in my opinion, is not thinking about racism at all until they go to market and try to deal with a white person. I mean, get that white person to buy their products, and the white person says, I'm not buying that, you know. And if I buy it, I'm going to buy it at a tenth of the price that you're trying to charge. And the person will say, well, I can't sell it to you for that because I'm just barely making a living now. And they say, well, hey, take it or leave it, buddy. I mean, so then the black person might bristle up and say, you know, well, I went through all this effort and that's all I'm going to get. And then they think about, you know, well, he's doing it because I'm black. And so he's not supposed to pay full price because he's white. You know, that's the way the colonialists are. And so he'll think about it during that transaction. But broadly speaking, he won't think about it as being the system of white supremacy is a world system that dominates everything, every move that every black person makes, directly and indirectly, in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And in answer to the question about or the statement or the viewpoint that a white person is talking about something else in many cases and not thinking about race at all when they are interacting with a black person. And I can understand how that works. You know, I interact with white people and all like that. I don't think they're keenly aware at the, you know, just saying good morning, how are you, and whatnot, and being very polite. And then I bristled up and started saying, you know, what do you mean it's a good morning? I mean, you know, it's a good morning for you white folks. Ain't no good morning for me. Now, some black people will react like that. I don't react like that, and the code says you shouldn't, okay? But at the same time, there's a system in place. The white person, to answer the question, doesn't have to be keenly aware, in other words, like of racism, because it's already in place. But the black person has to be keenly aware most of the time in every move that he or she makes. What neighborhood am I in? I'm jogging through here, and I'm black. So a white person who sees that black person jogging through the neighborhood may not think anything at all, one way or another, not even thinking about him, not even, they're looking at their computer or something. They're not thinking about that. And then there's a white person who looks out the window and say, hey, go get your shotgun. You ain't got no business over here. He's got to be up to something. Get in the pickup truck and let's follow him around, see what he's up to. I think he's stealing something. So that's just the way it works.
Okay.
But racism is always there, whether anybody thinks it's there or not.
All righty. Okay, let's move on. And let's say this. You are tuned into the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. This is the August the 10th edition of the show. The chat room is open, and there is some lively chats going on in there. Asenko for 777 is there. Jacoby 2 Kane 2 is there. Neuron is in the house. Produce 21 is there. Still Learning number 2 is still in there. But right now we go to the phone lines, and we will go to the 201 And that looks like it's Gregory. Gregory, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning, guys. I have an interesting question. It's dealing with the 8th area of activity. And Mr. Fuller, I'm an older gentleman, and when I was younger, I had an uncle who supposedly came from the South, and he would have sex with chickens and all kinds of animals or whatever. And long story short, he brought child molestation into my family. I talked to my family member, and she told me about all these people who had been raped in my family, including even myself when I was a young child. So I just want to ask you what you think about the fact that does that go on in a lot of black families? And I have another part to that question, too. It wants to go into more or less like, does he feel like, how do you feel about that going into what's going on with transgenders and all that as well now?
I heard a lot of noise in the background.
Yeah, I think he's driving. Gregory, ask one question. Ask one question at a time. Follow the rule. What was your first question so that Mr. Fuller can answer it?
So yeah, my first question is to Mr. Fuller is the fact that what does he think about child molestation that goes on in our own families, black families?
Oh, okay.
I think that's a thing.
Okay, hang on so we can get to your second question. Mr. Fuller?
Yes, that question is about conflict within the family?
No, I believe it was sexual molestation. Was that correct, Gregory? Wait a minute.
I want to get the question straight.
Yeah, Gregory, was that correct about sexual
molestation in our black families? Does he think that goes on a lot and untalked about?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get that, Mr.? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it goes on a lot. In fact, everything that's destructive that could go on among black people worldwide, if it's destructive, you can just about assume correctly that black people are deeply involved in it. Anything that is non-constructive, anything that's going to produce a non-constructive result, black people are over their heads in it. That's an automatic assumption, in particular in the system of white supremacy. See, no people on the planet, according to the code, have ever been the quality of people that people ought to be. Never happened in recorded history. Maybe in pre-recorded history. But in recorded history, all the artifacts that they have found so far and all like that, for one thing, people kill each other, all the tribes and whatnot. Just that alone means you're not progressive, that you haven't made any progress. I don't care who you are. People killing people, just that alone. If that happened in your tribe, or tribes fighting each other and anything like that, you are backward people. And that includes all the white people on the planet. Killing is a part of your itinerary, a part of your life, a part of your record. Killing, one person killing another, if it just happens one time, you're backward people. You're not successful at all. I mean, you're primitive. You haven't advanced. You don't have a civilization. Civilized means that doesn't happen not one time. Nobody even thinks of it happening. That's civilized. But look at what's going on now. And we're talking about ancient civilizations and modern civilizations and using that word. That word shouldn't be in anybody's mouth describing any condition anywhere on this planet as long as people have been on this planet in recorded history. According to whom? Neely Fuller? No. According to logic. You can't have people killing people and say you're civilized in any kind of way. Period. You're not civilized at all. Just on that one thing. Not to say anything about sexual molestation. I mean, hey, people killing people right out of the gate. I mean, that's a slam dunk right there. You're nobody. We're nothing. We're a bunch of garbage, all of us. Just as long as that's going on. And these standards are absolutely too low for what we call civilized people. Start talking about somebody, crossing a river or building a bridge or an aqueduct, and building statues to people, praising people. There's nobody on this planet worthy of praise, no matter who it is, in particular in this system of white supremacy that just keeps pouring gasoline on the fire, making people worse, making things better, and making people worse. That is the white supremacist contribution to what we call the world as we know it, more than anybody.
Okay.
Making things better sometimes. Of course, with all this environmental stuff going on now, they're realizing that a whole lot of things ain't better. They thought they were making improvements when they were killing nature. And that's something else the white supremacists do. They love artificial stuff. And that's killing nature. And now they're aware of it. And they say they're going to have a code now for humanity. Well, what did they have before? Question mark.
Okay. Let's see here. Gregory, let's get your second question quickly before we end this first segment. Go ahead.
Sure. I'd like to stay in line, but I guess I just wanted to ask him, how does he think that affects people in the 8th area?
Okay.
Oh, it's a terrible thing. You know, that's mistreatment. See, there's two types of things that go on between people. Correct treatment and incorrect treatment. Mistreatment of any kind is completely unacceptable. So you just ask one question. Does child molestation produce a constructive result? The record shows that it doesn't. It's taking advantage of somebody weak. Just the same old thing. All it is, fundamentally, is somebody who is stronger taking unjust advantage of somebody who is weak. It's called non-justice. That's not justice. I mean, a person who engages in any type of sexual activity should be aware of what's going on and why. And the end product should be constructive. That's not constructive. History has shown that's not constructive. So, anything that's non-constructive is not civilized, period. So you don't have any civilized people on this planet. We ought to stop talking about that.
Okay.
Yeah, they used to have a thing called child sacrifice. Go up on, people climb a mountain with children all wrapped up in some cloth and throw them into a volcano because they say the volcano, wouldn't erupt, maybe, if you sacrifice your children. And they'll say, yeah, but they built great pyramids in the forests and all like that, in the Amazon and all that. Hey, stop it. That's not civilized at all. Stop calling it civilization. I mean, that's an ugly term to attach to anything going on. It's a beautiful term when you start talking about, now we have universal man and universal woman, which we have never had in recorded history.
Yes. All righty. And to back you up, Mr. Fuller, not that you need backing up, but there is biblical history with the god Molech that people used to do in sacrificing their children. So what you said is true. Okay, you're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., heard here on Blog Talk Radio, and will be reproduced on ProduceJustice.com at the conclusion of this show. But we thank you for your listenership. If you'd like to get in contact with the show, just simply call 516-453-9921 and make sure that you press the number 1 button so that you can get in line, and so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question. Please do that. You can also get in, Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And if I had time today, I would read them, but I'm backlogged. But put it in there anyway. Put your Gmail in there anyway if you choose to use that particular method, and that eventually at some point I will read it and give you the date and time that your Gmail is read. Also, the chat room is open, and there are quite a few people in the chat. Swa just joined it, so we thank you, Swa. But there are some interesting chats that are going on, and one of the interesting chat has been about the book in which Mr. Fuller will speak about in about the next 16 minutes. But the book, and there's been some interesting responses to that, how you can get the book, and all different kind of information and what the book contains, and all the other things, including that if you want to hear more of Mr. Fuller and questions that people have to answer, you can do that by listening when he is on the Carl Nelson Show on radio station WOR in Washington, D.C. I know it's 1450 on the AM dial. And when Mr. Fuller is scheduled to be on, he usually lets us know, so that, and I let the people know, so that we can all listen in together, because I listen in also myself and still learning. That's the Carl Nelson Show. So hopefully I'll get to ask him again when he will be on that show. Before I go,
WOR or WL?
Yeah, WOL.
Okay.
Yeah, Kathy Hughes station, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
WOL.
Yeah. What did I say? WOR? If I said WOR, that is incorrect. It is WOL in Washington, D.C., 1450 AM. WOL is the radio station for the Carl Nelson Show, owned by Kathy Hughes. Okay, before I go to the next phone caller, Neuron had a question in the chat room, Mr. Fuller, before I go to the next caller. It says this, it says, Mr. Fuller, what is your advice for black males who have care units and are trying to inform their offspring and current, quote, wife, end of quote, about the seriousness of the system of racism, white supremacy, but is encountering resistance from the, quote, wife, end of quote, wife, oldest offspring? What do you say to those victims that say, quote, you're being too serious all the time, end of quote? Thank you.
Well, you go to the 4 wants. What do you want me to do? Why do you want me to do it? How do you plan for me to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? That's on page 171 and 172 of the textbook for victims of white supremacy. You can't get lost if you go to those pages, 171, 172. When anything comes up of anything controversial or non-controversial, it comes down to wants. Everybody wants something every minute of the day. Every creature, every squirrel, every alligator, every rhinoceros, every bird wants something. The fish in the water, they want something every second. They're just going here, going there, darting here, darting there. They want something. Then they're seeking something, usually food, okay, or a place to hibernate and to spawn other fish. But they want something. People are no different. If they're moving around, if they're awake, while they're sleeping, they probably don't want anything because they're asleep. But when every person is awake, you want to do something. You want to catch this bus. You want to change jobs. You want something. You want to eat a meal. So you find out, what does a person want? And how do you find it out? By asking. And that's all. Just ask people. When you get lost about interactions with people, any kind of people, regardless of what the controversy is about, just go to the 4 wants. Just say, okay, everybody quiet down. It doesn't make any difference what the age of the person is or how much they know about this and how much they know about that or don't know. Just say, okay, you want something because everybody wants something. So what do you want? And sometimes it's something they want to do. So you ask them that question. You paraphrase. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? You should have a plan if you want to do it. And what do you expect the constructive result to be? When you get to do what you want, W-A-N-T, to do. And if it's something they want you to do, you say, well, what do you want me to do? You don't want me to talk about race. You don't want me to do this and do that. Regardless of what the subject is, you can always go to those 4 wants. Well, what do you want me to do? Why do you want me to do it? How do you plan for me to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? It'll always take everybody right where they should be to answer to those 4 questions. It won't take everybody where they want to be, but it'll take everybody where they should be, because it will reveal truth. The answers to those 4 questions always reveals truth in such a manner that it will lead to settling that controversy, regardless of what the controversy is. If you don't believe it, try it. Just those 4 questions. I mean, everybody starts shouting at each other, and they're arguing back and forth about this, and if you just quiet everybody down and say, now, each and every person has a want. So you take everybody individually. You just say, okay, what is it you want to do? And they might say, it ain't what I want to do, it's what I want you to do. So you say, oh, okay, what do you want me to do? Question 1. And then after they say what they have to say, okay, why do you want me to do that particular thing? So they'll tell you, I guess. Whatever the answer is, and don't argue about the answer. Just move on to the next question. Then say, how do you plan for me to do it? Since you want me to do it, you must have a plan for me to do it, because I don't have a plan, so I'll listen to your plan. Okay? Or if you have a plan, you just tell them, okay, I can do that, and I can make a plan. You don't have to make a plan for me, if that's your answer. But if it's not, then since they are making this suggestion, let them tell you what the plan is. And then the 4th question, and that is the clincher. You might say the spotlight question. What do you expect the constructive result to be? Now, this will cover anything, anywhere on the planet, any time of day or night. The answers to those 4 questions, because it deals with wants. A fundamental motivation is wanting something for all creatures on the planet. Insects, everybody, all people. So you might say, well, what does that have to do with getting people to talk about racism? I'll guarantee you, if you start talking about wants, and you're black and on this planet in 2021, it's going to leave flat line head first right into that racist wall. Those 4 questions, that's where it's going to take you. It's going to slam up against that racist wall. You better believe that. If you're black and on the planet in 2021, you don't believe it? Try it. Just ask those 4 questions. It'll take everybody right where they should be, and that is to the race issue, without you even mentioning race. When they try to answer those 4 questions, it's going to run into the race thing somewhere along the way. Might take 2 or 3 days to get there. I mean, when you start working out the details, but there's no way to escape racism. See what I mean? If there was any way to escape it, we would have found that. And we wouldn't even be having this discussion today, because racism would be over.
All righty, let's go to the phone lines, and let's go to Marcus. Marcus, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I'm still learning. So my question today has to deal with being quote unquote proud of our history. I was engaged in an online public forum discussion, and one of the statements I was posed was this was the statement posed by someone quote unquote named Movie Monster. It says people need to ask themselves why they want to prohibit Black Americans from being proud of their history. Everyone else can be proud, but Black Americans have to be punished if they attempt to speak up for themselves. That's white supremacy. So my response was, what I said was, we have a history of slavery and mistreatment globally. What is there to be proud of, logically speaking? And that kind of, ticked some people off, and I was getting non-constructive results. So I just deviated. I just didn't respond to all the, the responses I was getting. But I had posed one question and that I could not get an answer to. I said, if we were to look and analyze at the condition of Black people then, and then compare and contrast them to the condition of Black people here on 8-4-2021, what is there to be quote-unquote proud of? So that's my question to you, Mr. Fuller. If we were to look at the condition of Black people then and compare and contrast them to this day in 2021, what is there to be quote-unquote proud of?
I'm going to do it again. Page 171, 172. Try that. Mm-hmm. What do you want me to do? See, once they start saying, hey, you don't want to be proud, you don't want this, start talking about proud. The code talks about pride, all right? And you take the position we don't have anything to be proud of. So let's go to those 4 questions. Once. See, it's something they want you to do, and they want you to change your point of view, I guess. But the procedure is, the codified procedure is ask questions. Why? Because questions and answers is always the way to go about solving any problem in the universe. So you go into the question mode. Just stop making statements and say, okay, what do you want me to do? You don't want me to talk about Black people not being proud or Black people being proud or whatever. So what do you want me to do? And let them tell you. And don't argue about the answer. Just be ready with the second question. And the second question is, why do you want me to do it? And hypothetically, to give an example, they might say, well, first of all, we want you to talk about Black people should be proud. That's what we want you to do. Okay, that's what you want me to do. All right, why do you want me to do it? I mean, all this Black pride. Why do you want me to have all this proud of being Black? Okay. And let them tell you, and don't argue about the answer. Just be ready with the next question. I'm saying this slowly, methodically, I hope. Why do you want me to be proud of being Black? And let them answer, and don't argue about the answer, regardless of what the answer is. And then move on to the third question. How do you plan for me to be proud of being Black? And then that fourth question, what do you expect the constructive result to be? Because there's a whole bunch of Black people walking around on the planet talking about how proud they are of being Black. And what I have seen as a result of it among the white supremacists said, oh, sure. Well, yeah, okay. You're my slave and you're proud to be Black as my slave? Go ahead with your pride. I'll help you to be proud. How much Kenta cloth do you want? I'll sell it to you. I'll cover you with it from head to foot. You can walk around with your, with some type of rod in your hand. I mean, that's magic. I mean, and you'll call it, you paint it black and put some type of totem pole head on it and say that this is a magic wand for blackness, and you want to stand on the street corner and shake it at people and say, this is the way to go, and I'm black and I'm proud. Go right ahead, Negro. I mean, hey, I'm on board with that. Be as proud as you want to, but do what I tell you to do, or you're going to find out what real power is. Pentecost won't save you from me. See, that's the white supremacist mindset. Now, that's just my evaluation because that's what I have seen happen over and over again. You can be as proud as you will walk around. Oh, yeah, Black Pride, Juneteenth, get out there and eat some barbecue and whatnot, do the boogaloo, shake your behinds. I mean, put on some grass skirts if you want to and go way back. I mean, and just take up all the middle of the street. Just be off the street by 12 o'clock if I tell you to, because that's my street with your Black Pride.
All righty. Thank you, Marcus, for your call, and I don't have to tell you, you know the rule. Don't be a stranger. Mr. Fuller, this is the time that we designate for you to speak about your book. There's been some good chat information in the chat room about your book, and we have new people that listen to the show all of the time and hear about this book. So for the next few minutes, could you speak about your book, please?
Yes, the things that I'm talking about now, I'm talking about taking a new view of an old subject, which is the system of racism. And what is the new view, Flo? Is it something new? Yes. It's something new because it's not about having any pride or anything like that. In fact, the book says, never say that you're proud of being black. Figure out what to do about white supremacy. And that's not one of the things you need to say because of the effects. All during the 1960s, we talked about black pride. And like I said, what effect did it have? A lot of the people who were talking about black pride were killing each other about black pride, just like we are doing now. I mean, we got more dreadlocks than anybody in the world. But do dreadlock people kill other dreadlock black people? Yes. Filling up all the jails and whatnot. And we're all wearing locks. Those locks are supposed to mean black pride, I was told. That's what I heard when I first started seeing them. It's called message hair. See, hair, like, the Indians have feathers and whatnot, a lot of them in the northwestern hemisphere. And those feathers are supposed to mean something. What do dreadlocks mean? What does anything that black people do mean when it comes to the system of white supremacy? We got all kinds of signs and symbols and whatnot and wearing all kind of rings that got mysterious carvings on them and say, now, this means this. This goes all the way back to ancient Kemet. All right. The white supremacists look at that and say, what that is to me is a bunch of garbage, just like you, Negro, wearing all that stuff. I don't care what kind of dreadlock you come in here. You ain't dreading me. I mean, you ain't going to put no dread on me. I'll show you what dread is. And I ain't got no locks at all. Okay? I got straight blonde hair and blue eyes. You're going to find out what that means in about 5 minutes if you get hot with me. Because I know what real world is like. And that's the white supremacists. So we have a book that I have written that tells us, think at a different level, speak at a different level, act at a different level, so that we get what? The most constructive results out of every move that we make. No more just doing things and doing things and doing things and doing things and nothing ever changes. And so the book even gives an instruction. How do black people stop killing each other. One thing, no contact, no conflict. See, black people who kill each other have contact with each other. So we are the type of poisonous people. We always talk about getting together. No, we need to back off. When we see each other coming, we should go the other way. That way we can't collide. You've got to have contact in order to have conflict. And a lot of black people have learned to love it. We want to have contact with each other so we can have conflict. We go all the way across town, pass by 1 million white people trying to get to that one black person that you're going to kill today. We need to tell the truth about ourselves. We are some messed up people, big time. Now, the textbook for victims of white supremacy that you can get by going to producejustice.com is to give some suggestions, that's all they are, from another victim of racism about how we should try maybe something different in going about solving this problem as individual people. And that itself will bring on a whole lot of questions. But all questions do have answers. And I'm supposed to be presenting some answers. Haven't presented them all. Haven't even raised all the questions probably that need to be raised. But all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. And if we keep asking the correct questions and getting the correct answers, we can solve this problem called racism. That's the concept.
Okay. But going to producejustice.com.
Go to producejustice.com.
Okay.
All right. Part of it is a word guide that shows you how to use words, how not to use words. What questions asked when other people use certain words.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Before we move on, do you have any information about when your next, I want to say appearance, but when you might be on the Carl Nelson Show on WOL in Washington, D.C.?
No, I don't have any information, and I'll pass it on as soon as I get it, and that will be on the website, producejustice.com.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Fuller. Okay, this is a question. Lightning, I'm going to get you, but I got to ask this question here. This is from Miss Anonymous, Mr. Fuller. She said, how did special education get started, and why do they target black single parents' kids?
Oh, I'm not familiar with the details of special education. You know, I haven't even talked with anybody in depth or even peripherally about it. I don't even know what special education is and how it is put together, the nomenclature, what to do, what to say, to have what you call special education. But I will say this about education in general. You tell the truth about things. Now, one thing that black people need to be doing is we do have to learn how to use mathematics, which that is a weakness in all educational systems. And we have, it's what I discovered back in the 1930s is that there are a lot of people who know mathematics, you know, millions of people, including black people. They are math geniuses, you might say. Lots of people know mathematics, but I discovered, I mean, at a very early age, I'm talking about 9, 10 years old, very few people can teach math. I don't say they don't know how to teach it, but I don't think anything has been set up scientifically in this day and time. By the year 2021, everybody should be able to do math with a breeze. I mean, logarithms, algebra, the whole thing by now. Many people, including myself, don't even know basic math. We got to grab a calculator.
I mean, this is one thing that hasn't improved at all. You have, say, people have difficulty. A lot of people drop out of school on account of just one thing, math alone, all right? Because everything is mathematical. The universe itself. You understand math, and you can apply math to politics and everything else. Cause and effect. That's all math is. Cause and effect. Something has a cause, and that cause has an effect. And so it comes down to what is the effect. Is it constructive or non-constructive? That's math. But math is logic. You learn a lot about math. You learn about how to get things done, how to build a house from scratch. Okay, that's mathematics. But very few people, lots of experts on mathematics, not as many as it should be, because it's not taught. I mean, if you have a person at a blackboard that's going on from drone hour after hour, everybody nodding off, I mean, that's what happens in a math class. There's got to be a reason for that. Has anybody scientifically studied why it is that mathematics is difficult? I mean, I think there are people who are capable of doing that, mathematical people. You learn mathematics, but do you know how to teach it to a person who is a real mathematical dummy? I mean, can't put two matchsticks together, I mean, and say that they're together. Can't have a matchstick in one hand and a matchstick in the other hand and know the difference between one matchstick and two matchsticks. Two pencils and one pencil. Two pencils are different from one pencil in that there are two pencils on the desk. That's mathematics. But very few people know how to teach. And there's a reason for that in the system of white supremacy. Because they know that when black people start thinking about logic, cause and effect, white supremacy is in serious trouble. In serious trouble. So educational system, somebody should be talking about that. How do you teach math?
Mm-hmm.
You know? I mean,
okay.
I think the average math teacher, I'm just guessing now, looks at a class of 100 people and says, hey, about 5 of them will get it. The rest of them are just going to be barely limping along, if that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, we're going to have to conclude it right there, Mr. Fuller, because we are coming up on the end of the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. For those who will have to go, we want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for your calls if you were able to get through. Our lines are busy. But if you have to go, don't forget, tune in next week, and we should have some more good information for you. But for those who are staying, stay tuned for the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., heard here on Blog Talk Radio and also reproduced on ProduceJustice.com. We're going to take a 5-second break, and then we're going to open up the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned. All righty, welcome back to the Counter-Racist Code Show second hour with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. We took 10 seconds instead of 5 to open up this program, but we are here nonetheless, and your calls hopefully will be answered along with your Gmails. To call into today's program, the usual number is 516-453-9921. And be sure when you call that number to press the number 1 button, and you will get in line, and your call will be, hopefully, I'll have an opportunity to get to your calls as we have just crossed the 10 a.m. time. I guess that's GMT time? Yeah. Or the atomic clock, whatever that is. It's 10 o'clock, so we are on. If you would like to get into the chat room, you can. The chat room is on, and it is popping this morning with a lot of participants and good question and good information. So that's very good for you chatters that are in there. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. That's the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And hopefully I'll have a chance to get to your Gmails, if not today, which I probably won't, but at some point in time I will do that and get a chance to read your Gmail and begin to tell you about that. When you elect to call, please, ma'am, please, sir, make it as brief as you can so that Mr. Fuller can understand the question. In the same way, if you give a, excuse me, pardon me, wow, something got stuck in my throat. VGQ, if you do that, please make that short so we can have Mr. Fuller address that and get to that. And while we're on the subject of that, listen, if you do encounter a problem in receiving some of the materials, listen, I am not the person that you should contact. Some people think that I have some pull or I can get things done. It is no, I can't do that. I have to use the same method that you use to do. That is, you have to go to producejustice.com, and eventually somebody will get in contact with you to, address your concern, but not Mr. Bobby. Mr. Bobby cannot do that. I'm still learning myself. But, so, in other words, please, ma'am, please, sir, it would be good if you did not contact me about that. But just go to producejustice.com. That's what they told me to say, and you can, hopefully get your questions and resolve about that. Okay. All righty. Now, let's go to, let's see, the 334. That would be Lightning in Alabama. Okay, Lightning, I think we got you on. Go ahead. Hello, Lightning. One more time. Lightning in Alabama. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Nope. Okay, Lightning. Then we got to go to my brother. I know he's there. There we go. Swa out in California. You're on, sir.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Neely Fuller.
Yes, sir.
I have a VGQ and a question. The VGQ is last week we finished your book, Mr. Neely Fuller, cover to cover, and it was a very constructive and useful read. The next book we are covering is Race Code War that you had recommended, and I've already started it, and this has been very, very constructive, but we're starting that book in about 2 weeks. If folks want to join some victims of racism who are trying to become less confused about what's happening on planet Earth, you can email counteringrws@gmail.com. And my question, Ms. Neely Fuller, is last week this white child followed me around my complex, and then as I was swimming, he was pointing a toy gun at me and pulling the trigger. So I asked him, trying to follow your advice and stay in the question lane, I asked him, do you like shooting black people? And my question for you is, what's that a logical question to ask?
Sure. Did you get an answer?
Yeah, he just shook his head, no. And then I told him, then stop. That was probably my error. But then he proceeded to keep doing it, of course, because white supremacists do what white supremacists do.
Yes, you can ask anybody any kind of question that involves you, and just see what the answer is. And whatever answer you get, then you go into, well, here again, page 171, 172 of the textbook for victims of white supremacy. What do you want to do? Well, I want to pretend that I'm shooting you. Well, why do you want to do it? And then just listen for the answers. What do you want to do? You're pointing this thing at me. I mean, the imitation gun and whatnot. And why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? Well, I plan to do it by just following you around the neighborhood, pulling the trigger on this little toy that I have in my hand. Okay, what do you expect the constructive result to be? See, it applies everywhere. That's just one part of the code, but it's like the whole code wrapped up in 4 questions. Really, the wants. It's one of the last things that went into the 2016 revised expanded edition of the textbook that's over 400 pages. But it's just got 4 questions in there that you might say is the center, and it's one of the last things I put in the book because it's one of the last things I thought about putting in there. I had a lot of material. And I said, well, this looks like something that needs to go in there right now. So I got in touch with the people. The book was fixing to go to press. I said, I got to have that in there, those 4 wants, because that's the core. Every creature wants something, wants to do something, every minute of the day that creature is awake and moving about. The creature wants something. So it comes down to those 4 questions. What do you want to do? The creature either wants to do something itself or it wants someone else, some other force, some other power to do something. This applies to every creature, every flea, every person, every sailor, every soldier, every funeral home director. They want to do something. Every teacher. Every person that's running for the bus, they want to catch the bus. Simple things, but it all has to do with wants. Every second you want to do something. So what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And then that last question, the dynamite question, what do you expect the constructive result to be? And underline constructive result. And the answers to those questions will take everybody right where they should be. Everybody, whether they want to go or not. Those answers to those questions will take everybody right where they should be.
All righty. All right. Thank you, Brother Swab. You are a loyal listener. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. All righty. Let's go back to Lightning. Let's see here. Let's see if we can get him in here. Lightning, are you there now?
Yes. I was talking with your phone screener. I had a problem with.
Okay, Lightning. Lightning, you were on, and now you're not. Lightning. Let me see here. Okay, wait a minute. It could be right here. Okay, Lightning, are you there now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was.
Mr. Fuller, can you hear Lightning?
I can hear, but okay. He was cut off.
Yeah, you're cutting off here, Lightning. Are you back, or what's going on here? Okay, I'm gonna try it one more time. Lightning, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear anybody but you.
Okay, neither can I, Mr. Fuller. Hey, Lightning, I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's the usual suspects, but you're coming in and you're coming out. One more time, and then I'm gonna have to go to somebody else. Okay, Lightning.
The order has been received.
Okay, go ahead. Lightning. This is not good. Not good at all. Okay, Lightning, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Until they work it out, I'm going to put you on a mute and see if we can get this thing worked out with the control. It may not be you. In the meantime, I'm going to go to Anthony, who's in Nashville. Let's see if that works. Anthony, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Yes, Anthony, go ahead, please.
All right, greetings, gentlemen. I got a VGQ and I got a question now. The VGQ is, I personally believe that diet influences behavior, and personally, according to, due to all this processed junk food that they have now, I believe it's contributing to more black people committing more crimes. That's my VGQ. And my question is, on page 323 in the area activity on sex, I just want Neely Fuller to, if there's any way possible, he can explain the reason why non-white, the code says that the white supremacists use, non-whites are pretty much used as prostitutes and hoes, and I just wanted Neely Fuller to pretty much explain that for me.
323?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
We're at on 323. I'm there, right? Oh, okay. At the top?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what did you want Mr. Fuller to answer?
Well, I just want him to, because I understand what he means, but I just want him to explain to the world what he means by how the white supremacists use us non-whites as hoes and prostitutes.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
Yes, it's right there. It says explanation. But the statement, whore/prostitute, area 8, sex. During the existence of racism, white supremacy, do not say that any person is a whore unless you and that person agree that both of you are whores. Explanation. During the existence of white supremacy and according to compensatory counter-racist logic, all of the non-white people in the known universe function as direct or indirect whores for the white supremacists, racist man and racist woman, collectively. This whore service, quote unquote, is rendered in every area of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, counter-war. So basically all that means is you are doing something that is what you might call non-constructive or immoral when you're in service to the system of white supremacy. So being victims of white supremacy, all black people are prostitutes, meaning it's not just in sex, but in all the areas of activity. We are subject to an evil system. Prostitution and whoredom is evil. Why? It produces non-constructive results. Prostitution and whoredom is just another way of producing non-constructive results. The results are non-constructive, whether it's in sex or in economics or in law or in politics or in education. If you're getting an education that is producing non-constructive results, you come out and you say you're educated, and then you start doing things that are non-constructive, that means that you got a prostitution type or whore type so-called education. And so in the system of white supremacy, there's no way, bottom line, for black people to not be whores and prostitutes, one way or another. If not sexually, then in other areas of activity. But that would include sex anyway. Because even though you say, well, hey, I'm a black female, I don't go around, I never laid down, with anybody, for money and money only. There wasn't nothing else involved. I never did that. I'm no whore, I'm no prostitute, being a subject to the system of white supremacy in any area of activity. is a form of prostitution, a form of whoredom, and that would apply to male and female or any other category of black people, regardless of what you call yourself. A politician who has a long title in front of his name, a priest, a black priest who has a long title, the high potentate, supreme leader, mayor, governor, whatever, 40 different titles, because black people in the system of white supremacy, we've been taught to be crazy about titles. You know, we're so starved to be recognized as being worthy, so we stick any kind of, thing that we think is real important in front of our names, which, according to some scholars, say that not your name anyway. Most of us in the northwestern hemisphere, including the so-called original indigenous people, now have what you call English names without being what you call English people or white people. But that's another story. But I'm saying whores, prostitutes, that's the explanation. The explanation is right there on page 323 of the textbook for victims of white supremacy. Why? I said that that's what black people are. Now, it's your choice, like everything in the book, as to look at on yourself as being that. But if anybody had asked me, everything in the textbook, that is presented is optional. That's why it's called a United Independent System. Everything that you read, you can say, I'm not calling myself no whore or no prostitute in the system of white supremacy. I'm not doing that or in any other circumstance. Well, you just don't do it. But if anybody asks me, well, Fuller, are you a black prostitute? I'll say yes, but I'll explain it to you. Yes, I am. I'm a prostitute, traded myself to the white supremacists, the system of white supremacy in all areas of activity. Economics, I prostituted myself. I begged them for jobs when they should be giving me one. I begged them for a house, for health care. I begged them to let me go here and let me go there. That's a form of prostitution. When you have to beg for something that you're entitled to. And they will give it to you or not give it to you on the basis of how they perceive you at the time. That's prostitution. Unless I've been misinformed. That's another codified statement.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Anthony from Nashville, thank you for your call, and don't be a stranger. Let me see if this is Lightning. One more time. Lightning, is this you right here in the 334?
Yes.
Or is it? I'm sorry?
Yes, it's me, Mr. Bobby. How are you
go ahead.
Mr. Fuller today?
Go ahead. We got you loud and clear now.
I was talking to your phone screener. He was getting my information. I had a problem with my second order of books. But
okay.
I would just like to do a VGQ. Love Mr. Fuller. I love all the work that you all do and what the information you all bringing out. But my VGQ is you don't understand white supremacy, which is racism. Racism is white supremacy. What it is and how it works. Everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Learn what white supremacy is and how it works, and you will see a little clearly in this evil world we're in. Love you, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Bobby, thank you.
All right, Lightning, thank you for your kind words. Thank you so much, sir. All righty, chat room is available for those of you. There are some very, 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 very good questions and answers in the chat room. Special hello to Still Learning too. See, Rita 888 is in there doing real good job. Invisible Negro is in the house. Brother from England, I call him DeKeller. J.J. Keller is there, but there are others that are in, and if you get a chance, go to the chat room and look at the things that are being discussed in the chat room. Is very, very good for you. Let's do this. Big John in Houston. Big John, got you on, brother. Go ahead.
Greetings,
yes, sir,
and grand rising to you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Bobby, are you familiar with the Georgia Guidestone?
The what?
The Georgia Guidestones.
No, I'm not familiar with that, but I can look that up.
Yes, they were built in Georgia in 1980. The first tenet of the Georgia Guidestones is reducing the world population, pending, we're told, around 8 billion, to 500 million or less. I understand what Mr. Fuller said earlier this morning, that all things can be forgiven other than the sex issue, and obviously some may have to re-listen to the earlier part of the show if they came in late. But my next statement, or better yet, whether you call it a VGQ or a question for you, I wanted to ask you about the Guidestones first, because that shows you the overall plan and agenda, and it's like 10 Commandments, literally etched in granite. Are you familiar with the Anunnaki? Because that leads to my question, whether it's a VGQ. The Anunnaki, or the Lord Inky, supposedly came here, and some might even confuse it with the mythology from the Nation of Islam of the big head scientist Yaqub. So either they're reptilian, alien existence. Where do you and Mr. Fuller Jr. believe the origin of the so-called Caucasoid, albion, or albino race of people, using that term loosely? And is it significant or important to understand that to truly dismantle white supremacy, if we don't understand the origin of where these people are? They're not just alien to our particular land here in North America. If there is the belief, and you've heard some of this with this extraterrestrial supposed disclosure thing going on, if it is true that they are from extraterrestrial outside planet Earth origin, and that would give me the understanding of why it's close to compare them to a parasite or a virus, because they truly are not of this world. And thank you for the time, Mr. Bobby. Can I hold so I can hear his response?
Okay, I'll put it on. Put you on there. Yeah, right there. Okay. Let's see. Let's do this. Mr. Fuller or anybody else that call, the questions that are to be asked, since this is basically Mr. Fuller's show, should be directed to Mr. Fuller, although I will answer something off of the air. But if you can, ma'am, if you can, sir, please direct your question to Mr. Fuller. Okay, Mr. Fuller, about the Anunnaki, which I have read about that and all that information that John had talked about, but what say you concerning that information?
It comes under VGQ.
Okay.
Victims Guarantee Qualification. Anybody who says these things is qualified to say it if that person, that body, is a person who says these things is a victim of white supremacy. So a victim of white supremacy under VGQ, Victims Guarantee Qualification, is qualified to say anything that he or she chooses to say. Qualified to say anything that he or she chooses to say about race, racism, or counter-racism, meaning white supremacy. Counter-racism means being against white supremacy. Racism is white supremacy. Race is white supremacy, because the white supremacists are the usual suspects, and according to most evidence, are the people who thought up the idea of white supremacy. I don't think anybody other than somebody white could have thought of the idea of white supremacy other than somebody classified as white. Classified by whom? By themselves. They classify themselves Then it went around classifying everybody else according to what? According to color. That's the white supremacists. And some people can say, when did, people argue back and forth about when it started and how much genetics has to do with it, and the origin of the species, and why do you have white people in the first place. But any person who is a victim of white supremacy can say anything. Is qualified to say it anyway, whether you let them say it or not. They're definitely qualified about race, racism, and or counter-racism according to what? Counter-racist logic. I mean, you're automatically qualified for that. And no one who is a quote-unquote fellow victim of white supremacy is qualified to say you shouldn't say that, because you are qualified to say it. So anything that any person, if you're a victim of white supremacy, you can say anything about white supremacy that you want to say because you're qualified to say it, because white supremacy shouldn't exist. And even if you say something in favor of it, and you're a victim of white supremacy, you're qualified to say that you are in favor of white supremacy. That white people should have, say, for example, white people have the divine right to dominate black people. I mean, they were assigned by God to be dominant over black people in all of their comings and goings, in all of their affairs, in all 9 areas of activity. A black person is qualified to say that. And functionally, according to the code, all that a black person is qualified to say about that qualification, when that black person says it, is he said what he said, or she said what she said. And that's it, according to the code. Now, the reason for that is to keep black people from arguing with each other in this prison yard called the system of white supremacy. Why? Why do you keep black people from arguing with each other about race, racism, or counter-racism? Because it doesn't produce a constructive result. And that's been proven over and over again.
All righty. Got to break it off there, Mr. Fuller. Right there. Thank you. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on blogtalkradio.com. And also the show will be reproduced on ProduceJustice.com. In about 15 minutes, Mr. Fuller will talk about the books that you can get and all the materials on ProduceJustice.com, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Now, if you'd like to get in contact with the show in the remaining 30 minutes, just simply dial this number, which is 516-453-9921. Be sure to press the number 1 button, and so that you can get in line, and hopefully your call will be addressed. You can also get into the chat room, and there are some outstanding conversations going on in the chat room. So-called Black has just joined the conversation. Invisible Negro is in there. JJ is in there. JJ Killer, Be Good 1 is there. Still Learning number 2 is definitely in there. Produce Justice 21 is there. But there are many good conversations there, and you can be a participant in that and give your, if you will, VGQ in that. You can also reach me or the show by my Gmail account, number 7, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and it will get in order. And hopefully at some point in time, maybe not today, I will get a chance to read it. Okay. Let's move on, and let's go down to Charlotte, North Carolina, where we getting ready to, yes, right, you know who this is. This is my man, Willie. I don't know why I want to call you Slick Willie, because I don't even know a Slick Willie, and I don't even know if you're slick. But guess what? You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, Willie. Do your thing.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. Greetings to you.
Good morning, sir. Yes, sir.
I have a VGQ on the question, and it was just fascinating to hear Mr. Fuller talk about mathematics and the importance of it. First generation college, went to got the undergraduate reading at the 8th grade level, doing 8th grade mathematics. Wound up with took me 6.5 years to get a math degree, and I taught high school mathematics up to calculus for about 13 years. I can tell you, for the most part, you can't, when we wind up in a university setting, you can't spray us out of an aerosol can into a math class or engineering and STEM, science, engineering, technology, and mathematics. And that's not, that it was one of the most difficult things I ever did in my life. But it's like putting on a pair of glasses, those glasses where you can see things that, like black light, you see things that you can't see with the visible eye. Mathematics and the logic of mathematics allows you to see code and reality that remains invisible to most of it. My question is, now we're into artificial intelligence and quantum computing, and the importance of that is you hook up all the supercomputers in the world to break an encryption code that would take millions of years to break right now. Quantum computer can do it in about 4 or 5 seconds. That's the importance of us getting into STEM. Unless we get into STEM, we're doomed. My question for Mr. Fuller is, for how do we, the folk like myself who struggle to get into that, how do we promote the spirit of mathematics and logic, mathematical logic? How do we promote that among black people? So I was fascinated to hear him talk about that. How do we get us from that mindset of fear, whatever, it's hard work, whatever, into the mathematical sciences as a part of how we operate?
Okay.
So any suggestions that he would have, I would appreciate that.
Okay, Willie. Thank you so much. Mr. Fuller?
Well, the fundamental question about mathematics is the fundamental questions about existence itself. How do you get things done? That's, you walk into a math class or really any other class. That classroom, what they call somebody's going to teach something. Teach what? What do you mean by teach? Well, we're going to show you how to get things done. How to get things done like what? Well, how to solve problems, because everybody's got problems. All right, now that's one thing that everybody can understand. I mean, if you ask people to do help, is there anybody here got any kind of problem? If you ask any crowd of people, it's a lot of hands are going to go up. So problems are solved mathematically. All problems. It just comes down to what kind of language you use so that people understand how to solve the problem. So a language for teaching math, the way that it is being taught, in my opinion, is cumbersome. I'm saying in order to teach math, in answer to the question, somebody with a mathematical and a literary mind, mathematics and, got to find a language. Literary means dealing with language. When you talk to people or when you write something, what you're writing or what you're saying must be instantly understood. Must be. Particularly when you're talking about, quote, problem solving. And that's why I say even my textbook is sloppily written. If you just take it from a literary standpoint, I say it's the best, one of the best, of the worst written textbooks on counter-racism ever produced. And I'm being honest about it because, you know, in order to solve race problems, any other kind of problem, you got to be truthful. So in my own opinion, my own evaluation of my own work is that this textbook, mathematically, could have been done much better. Why? Math, in order for it to be effective, has to be understood and should be written in a language to where you instantly understand it. Nobody has to have a furrow or scratching their head about any mathematical problem ever. So that means that something is missing in the language that is used to transfer what is learned about getting things done, which is what mathematics is about, from a teacher to a student. It's like you tell somebody how to drive a car, or show them, or demonstrate. That's all mathematics, all right? And the language of telling a person how to do it, how to park, look in your rearview mirror, I mean, watch how you back up, line up the car, that's all mathematics. But we haven't found a language where the average person knows all of the mathematics. I mean, can learn it in one day, maybe. Sometime in the future, learn all of the math that it takes to get to the moon and back. Just think of that. But you have to have a language that'll do it. One of the first things I noticed when I was in elementary school is that when I went from spelling class, because I learned to spell thanks to Miss Morrison, I mean, after being held back, I flunked the first grade on account of my spelling. She held me back. In about a couple of weeks, she had me up to scale because she knew. She learned how to go about teaching me how to spell. She picked me out, singled me out, and said, I can get him. I see where his problem is. So she worked with me, and I was burning up those spelling pads because I understood what she was saying. Before, first time around, all the rest of the class got it, and I didn't. And me and another young black boy. I mean, we were the only two left behind. Everybody else moved on to the other class. That's devastating to a first-grade student. But Miss Morrison held me back. I'm still talking about mathematics now. Because all it does, it just means communication. No one has come up. All the geniuses out here has not come up with rather than use the term logarithm as an example. I couldn't understand what a logarithm is. The person is going to the board talking about logarithms. I never heard anything about a logarithm. Never even heard the word before I got in mathematics class. That shouldn't happen. I should have instantly recognized what a logarithm is. Number one, before I got to a mathematics class, so that when I got to the mathematics class, the mathematician who is teaching me wouldn't say, okay, now we're going to have logarithms. And got to get the language straight first. I got to learn a whole new language out of the languages that I heard in the other classes. See, there's a big gap there, and always has been. That needs to be examined thoroughly. So that the language of mathematics, when you transfer that information, because that's all that is information. That's how you learn information. I mean, everything should be crystal clear. First time around. Not coming around having what you call remedial classes. I had about 5 of them, remedial math. That means something is wrong the first time around. You got to keep remedying. We weren't doing that with the other classes, remedial this and remedial that. But more than any class, you had remedial math, which means you didn't have the language straight in the first place. The language needs to be changed radically. Person talking about algebra, and I didn't even know what the word algebra meant in a way that I could understand it. So maybe I'm tapping into some uncharted territory here, but that's what codification is about. tapping into uncharted territory.
All righty. Thank you, Willie, for your question, and you don't have to be a stranger there. Mr. Fuller, something was brought up in the chat room about refinement, the refinement stage of white supremacy. For those who don't have the book or soon will be getting the book, which we will be discussing in a few moments, what is the refinement stage of white supremacy?
Well, white supremacy, according to the compensatory code you can get by going to producejustice.com, is described in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. White supremacy goes through 4 stages, like just about everything does, I guess. If now that I think about it, establishment, that's getting it started. That's stage number 1. That's getting it started. Establishment. You got to start somewhere. If you're going to have a system of racism, you got to start somewhere. So the establishment stage, how do you go about setting up a system? Just like, what's the recipe for some food? Okay, get the recipe before you do anything. Before you just start buying stuff, get the recipe for what you're going to make. Have an idea of what it is you're going to try to make. What's the plan? What's the recipe? Okay, so that's the establishment stage, first stage. Then after you get something established, like you built a house, that's an establishment. Now you want to do what? You want to maintain the house. Make sure the plumbing is working. Make sure that, when you turn on the gas, mathematically, the gas is hooked up mathematically so that you get the right amount of gas. You don't, you're there at your stove, all of a sudden you turn on the stove, you turn the knob, and you get a huge fire that jumps up almost, and you have to jump back from it. Now, something mathematically didn't go correctly, all right? So you want to get that done. So that's what you call the second stage. And it's the same thing applies to white supremacy. Maintenance. The maintenance has to be correct, okay? On your plumbing, on your gas. You don't want too much. You don't want too much fire coming out of that burner, okay? And you don't want too little, or you can't get anything done. It's all about getting things done. Establishment, that's getting it started. Then the maintenance. Then the expansion, meaning like building a house. That's one way I'll explain it. You say, okay, I got 2 bedrooms, but now, I got some relatives going to move in with me and whatnot. I'm going to refurbish that basement and put an extension on it, and then I'm going to add 2 more bedrooms because my grandmother's going to move in. She's moving out of that little house she's been in all this time. She can't stay over there by herself. So I'm going to add a bedroom. And I better add another one while I'm doing it, because I might need another one. Because some of my other relatives might want to move in on account of a lot of evictions are going on. So I'm going to make some space. Okay? So that's what you call expansion. You expanded. You made it bigger than it was when you started. And then the last stage, refinement. In answer to the question, what is the refinement stage? That's that 4th stage. That's putting the finishing touches on what you have established, maintained, and expanded. So that means finishing touches like what? Oh, well, now I got this house built. Well, now. And it's a good, sturdy house. Everything works in it. I maintained it. I expanded. Everybody's settled in. Now I think that I'll paint it. See, that's the last thing. You didn't do that the first time. You were just trying to get the house built. Winter's coming. You got to get in there. Okay, so now you're going, someone's here. You're going to do this paint job now. All right? So you do everything you can to get a good, nice coat of paint on it, finish it up, start working on the lawn, start working on all of the outside, and put in some storm windows maybe. That's refinement. And I'm going to tweak this and tweak that. And I started off, I moved this old stove in here. I think I'm going to get a new stove for this space. And, we need more counter space. So I'm going to do that too. That's refinement. The system of white supremacy works the same way. They established it, then they maintained it, then they looked around and say, I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to take in more people because more black people are being born on the planet every day. So that means I got to refine my system so that I include all them too in my domination, in my dominion. So that's expansion. And then the refinement stage, now I'm going to teach all these black people to do all of the evil things that I do, but they're going to do it to themselves. That's refinement. First, I whip them in the line. That's how I did it in the establishment stage because they wouldn't listen to me. Now I got them pretty well tamed. I maintained them. I expanded them they had babies, and I helped make some of those babies. And I'm going to put them up there on the, in the system of white supremacy too. I just crowd them all in there. All right. And then refinement, put the finishing touches on it, like get their minds to go along with everything that I say. Get them to like all the things that I want them to like. Get them to buy the things that I want them to buy. Get them to have the holidays that I will call holy days for them and who they will commemorate. And I'll give them even the days, that pertain to them that they say they want as holy days. And that's refinement. Get them to go along with it, and not only get them to go along with it, but tell them what to do on those days. Barbecues, booty shaking, tamarines, guitar, banjo, jumping up and down, spinning on your head, and keeping my business of white supremacy going forever. I got them tamed now. That's refinement. They're tamed.
Alrighty, question just came up. Mr. Fuller says, if a white man's anus is a new black vagina, why are we inundated with photos of black women's behinds, or you just said booty shaking?
Oh, yeah, that's the training ground. See, later on they're going to say, hey, black females, they got, just like everybody got an anus. Okay, alligators got anuses, but, and I'll have you into that too if you're black, somewhere down the line. But that's the training ground. See, they start off with the black female, just like we start off all the abuse and whatnot with the black female, okay? Now, the more you abuse the black female, the more you worship the white female. See, the white supremacists understand that. See, that's why the black female, she's abused more. There's some black pimps that abuse white females, but basically, a black female is somebody that you're supposed to abuse. We've been taught that under the refinement of white supremacy. So the white supremacists abuse black females. So we just follow in their footsteps. See, we don't know that that's what we're doing, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay? We're trained that way. So the black female finally just gives up, and then they fall into each other's arms, which is a part of the white supremacist plan.
Yeah.
But we will go for the booty shaking, then we go for the booty, and then, okay, that's on-the-job training. But ultimately, they'll say, now you want a refined booty, all right? Now you bypass the white female, all right, and go straight to the white male, because that's what the white male, more than anybody, is emphasizing that every black male, you should be into another form of sexuality other than this primitive thing of male-female. That's primitive. That's backward. You want to have more variety, more diversity. They got all kinds of slangs for it and official titles, okay?
Yes, sir.
They're leading us into it. So that's what that's all about. I mean, and so the crowning glory, ultimately sexually, in the minds of the white supremacists, for every black male, is to be worshiping the white male anus. That will be the new black vagina. The new black vagina will be the white male anus in the system of white supremacy in the future. And the black female breast is going to be obsolete along with her vagina. And what's going to take its place is the white male phallus.
Wow.
So you switch from the black female's breast. I mean, that ain't no good for nothing. Cut them off or do something with them. Get them out of the way. I mean, it ain't good for nothing. The black female breast, something that nurtures me. Now you're going for the white male phallus is the new black breast.
Wow.
White male anus is the new black vagina. And that's what the white supremacists will let black people know in the future. There's a perfect world for you black people.
All righty. Woo, that was deep. Josh in Kentucky, you might be my last one. Brother John in Atlanta, we have to get to you next week. But go ahead, Brother Josh in Kentucky, with your question for Mr. Fuller quickly.
Hey, Mr. Bobby.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Bobby.
Yes, sir.
Real quick for you, how do you get into the chat room?
You know what? All I do is pull up the Blog Talk screen, and then it has the episode into it, then it has chatting, and then you're in. That's the only thing I know. If somebody knows, they can put it on there real quick. I can read it there. But was that your question?
No, I have one for Mr. Fuller. All
righty. Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, why do you think the white supremacists would want to become universal man and woman, being that they're getting all the benefits right now because they're supreme? And what would the constructive result become of that?
If I understand the question, when the white supremacists become universal man and universal woman?
Why would they want to?
Why wouldn't they want to? Because they will be people that don't mistreat people. The universal man, universal woman are people who definitely do not. The two main features is what's wrong with the entire world now. You eliminate that. They are people who guarantee justice. You got to do that in order to qualify for to be a universal man and or universal woman. You've got to qualify. You've got to have very strict qualifications for that are very, you might say if you want to use that word, and I usually don't, quote, unquote, liberating. In other words, it's something we have never seen. A universal man, a universal woman. Why? Because you've never had justice on the planet in recorded history, which means what? They guarantee that no person is mistreated. You got to guarantee that in order to have universal men and universal women. You got to guarantee that no person is mistreated. That's number one. Number two, you got to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help without fail each and every minute, each and every day, everywhere in that universe of universal man and universal woman. In other words, we're trying to produce a person that's never existed in recorded history, because in recorded history, somebody's being mistreated.
Yes.
Or somebody didn't get the help that they need throughout recorded history. And those are the two qualifications. It's a whole bunch of others in every area of activity.
Okay. All right, Josh, thank you for your question, but here's an answer to the first question you asked. Produce justice or rather, Produce 21 said this: in order to get in the chat room, they said, Mr. Bobby, they need a Blog Talk Radio account. So, Josh, just get a Blog Talk Radio account, and then you can get in to the chat room and see all the delicious things that are being discussed there. Thank you for your call, and do not be a stranger. Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Brother John in Atlanta, I'll tell you what. Contact my show producer, and I'll put you up first next week because we have to round out the show. But I got your number down. Thank you for holding. But just contact the number you have now, and there's a person on the other end will make sure that you get to be first next week when you call in. So make sure you do that. Okay, thank you so much there. Okay, Mr. Fuller, we have about 3 minutes, 30 seconds, so I need you to talk about your book for a minute before I close out the show. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Directly and indirectly, everything we've been saying on this presentation and on all the previous presentations has to do primarily with replacing the system of white supremacy with the system of justice, correctness, through the use of truth, to start with the final product being a thing called, quote, unquote, and put it in that because it's never happened, peace, P-E-A-C-E, and replace the system of white supremacy, first of all, with justice, because you're not going to have peace without justice. You see people with signs saying, no justice, no peace.
No peace.
That's correct. So the textbook for victims of white supremacy, in order to have peace throughout the planet, up throughout the universe, which should be your ultimate goal, you got to have justice, you got to have truth in order to get justice, and correctness, balance between people, guaranteeing that nobody's mistreated, guarantee that the person that needs help the most will get the most constructive help. Now, the textbook for victims of white supremacy is supposed to start us down that road. It's not just talking about the problem, but making suggestions that are different, and not only just different just to be different, but that will work.
Yes, sir.
Suggestions that will work in eliminating racism and replacing it, first of all, with justice. And that's the first order of business.
Yes, sir.
You can't straighten out nothing, no other problem in the universe without getting rid of racism first. That's the first order of business. The textbook for victims of white supremacy are supposed to help the individual person on a daily basis how to think, how to talk, how not to talk, what things to say, things not to say, as an individual person, wherever you are, on the job, etc., at a meeting, what not to say at a meeting, how to go about saying things in every area of activity. That's what the books are about.
Yes, sir.
Telling the victims of racism, non-white people, black people, everywhere, worldwide.
And we
you
can
get
the book
it by going to producejustice.com.
Okay.
Go to producejustice.com.
All right.
And hopefully these books may be of some assistance in getting things done rather than just talking about.
Okay.
Maybe something ought to be done.
Okay.
Actually doing it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. We apologize, or I apologize for any interruptions that we had and any mistakes that I've made. We'll try to do better the next time. So, Mr. Fuller, thank you. Callers, thank you. And, again, we'll try to do better next time. Mr. Fuller?
And I thank everybody. I thank everybody who's on board.
Okay. Hopefully we'll see you next week on the Counter Racist Coach Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Everybody have a good week. Keep on still learning.
Still learning.